Today I'm going to talk about the IELTS speaking exam part 2. To do that, we're going to look at the IELTS speaking exam overall. The IELTS speaking exam is comprised of 3 parts. Part 1 is what we call the interview. There are general, simple questions such as, tell me about your family. What sports do you like to do? What kind of music do you listen to? And so on. Part 2, which we'll look at today, requires you to talk for 1 to 2 minutes about something. You will be asked to describe something. We'll come back to that in a moment. Part 3 are abstract questions. These are more difficult questions. They might be about what is right or wrong, or what is in the best interests of society. You'll be marked in 4 areas: fluency, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. For each of these, you'll get a score of between 0 and 9. Fluency means how readily do you talk? Are you hesitating too much? Can you talk easily even if you make mistakes? Vocabulary is not just about using difficult words, it's about using the correct words. And not just one word, but putting words together in the right way, such as collocations. Grammar refers to grammatical range and accuracy. It is very important to avoid making too many grammatical mistakes. Pronunciation refers to how well the examiner can understand you. Don't worry about your accent. Worry instead about intonation, the rising and falling of the speech. Think about which part of a word must be stressed and which words in a sentence should be spoken more than others. That brings us then to part 2, which we will look at in more depth. I have many videos about specific part 2 questions. You can find them at my YouTube channel. I have videos on how to describe a book, how to describe a sports person, how to describe a restaurant, and so on. So an overview of part 2. What do you need to do? Well, as we saw earlier, you need to describe something. That could be a person, a place, an animal, an activity or event, a memory, a photo. And to do this, you need to talk for between 1 and 2 minutes. You will be given a cue card. This is a piece of paper with some writing on it. And you have 1 minute to look at the card, and if you want, you can make some notes. You need to talk about what's on the card. You should in fact talk about everything that's on the card, and you should avoid going off topic. You can say some things that are not on the card, but they must be related to the topic on the card. You should talk slowly and calmly, and stay within the time limit. Why talk slowly? Well, people get very nervous in the IELTS speaking exam and they talk very fast. When you do that, a 90-second answer might be reduced to a 45-second answer. Then you fall below the 1 minute mark, and that is a big problem. If you reach 2 minutes, the examiner will tell you to stop. A cue card is always comprised of the following 3 things. The first line will begin with the word describe. Describe something. This is the basic task. The next line is actually 3 lines. It says you should say, and then 1, 2, 3. 3 things to talk about. These are usually details relating to the first idea. Finally, there will be a sentence beginning with and it often contains the word why. If it's a person, why you admire them, why you like them, and so on. You must talk about everything that is on this card. The cue cards are hard to predict. Now, they always follow that same pattern, and there are certain IELTS topics which you can look for and study for, but sometimes the cue cards can contain very strange and difficult things that you must describe, that in fact, even in any language, might be hard to talk about. Look at these examples. An expensive hobby you can't pursue daily. It might take a long time even to think about an example like that. A prize you have won. Well, maybe you have never won a prize. Then this is also a difficult question to answer, regardless of language. So what do? You have to look at the task and read it and interpret it as quickly and comprehensively as possible. Pay attention to all parts, and then use your time as best you can to make some notes. You will be given a pencil and a piece of paper to do this. You should not use full sentences. In teaching IELTS over many years, I have encountered so many students who sit down and they start writing their answer. If it says, describe your best friend, they might write, my best friend is such and such. By the time 1 minute has passed, they have only written down enough to speak for 10 seconds. They're in big trouble after that time expires. Instead, you should be writing down useful vocabulary or notes on structure. You should be reminding yourself of interesting and relevant things to talk about. Here is an example of a set of notes on the question, describe your favorite restaurant. This is actually from a video I made about 2 weeks ago. My notes include few words. That means they're easy and quick to write down. I wrote down some difficult vocabulary, the word memorabilia. I've written down a loose structure. In other words, I would talk from the first note through to the last, although you can also talk from the cue card, so this is less important. You can also include other important ideas that you might just want to remember and talk about. Remember, when you look at your notes, you can sometimes look at one word and talk about that word for 10 or 20 seconds. This can make sure that you easily reach the 1 minute target and push towards 2 minutes. Here is another example. This is talking about a famous person, the actor Bryan Cranston. You can use your notes to write down details, examples, and other items of vocabulary. You should group your words as 1, 2, or 3 words. This can help you better. Don't try writing down any sensible grammar in English. Remember, nobody is reading your notes. Nobody is going to give you a grade for your notes. When speaking, you should speak slowly but confidently. Avoid repeating yourself. Now, when time is a factor, people often repeat themselves to speak for longer. This is not good. Try to maintain a logical structure. If you're asked a question like, when did you first hear about something? Maybe you can start with that. That would be a logical starting point. It can help tell a story better. You can use transition words to help you. There's first, second, finally, but also words like meanwhile and therefore. These can help show the relationship between ideas. Finally, do remember to use correct intonation. This is very important. If you speak in a very boring way, your examiner will not be impressed. Let's look now at an example. This is actually an example from another video, one of my most popular videos. Describe a sports person you admire. I'll show you the cue card, which you can see here, as well as some notes and then the final answer. If you want to hear me read the final answer, you can look at my other video. Looking at these notes, we can see there are very few words. You could write this very quickly, but you could easily look at each line and talk for a while. The line Argentina to Barcelona is something alone you could talk about for half a minute. The word disability could remind you of the topic, but it could also be changed in word form to disabled. And finally, perseverance is an example of a less common word and therefore a good item of vocabulary to write down. Here is my final answer. You can find this by going to my website, www.TED-IELTS.com, and seeing the very first article listed. It is the most popular one. Or you can click down below this video to where it says TED-IELTS, and you can look back through my previous videos to the most popular ones, and you will find this there. I hope this video has been helpful for you. Like I've already said, you can check my previous videos for loads of examples of IELTS speaking part 2 answers. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and I will see you again later for another episode of TED-IELTS.